let's continue with our second of 4 speakers tonight. Ricardo is working at CERN with their infrastructure and well, keeping it all together, developing it, and making sure scientists get stuff done. Ricardo, when I first met him, it was in Barcelona, KubeCon Barcelona in 2019. He, on the keynote stage, at KubeCon, showed how the Higgs boson could be rediscovered in 20 minutes. So, like, yeah, the keynote stage, they had petabytes, exabytes, I don't know how much of data that they kind of put through, like, they analyzed during that keynote talk, and they were showing how they did it with Kubernetes, and those data and the live data and was analyzed, and well, we had discovered it in 15 minutes time. So Ricardo did continue to do other stuff as well, such as chairing the Kubernetes conference, KubeCon, to which there comes like 13. The last one was 13,000 people in. Now it was in London, like just a month or so ago. And then, as part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, one of the kind of foundations that take care of these server management technologies is part of the Technical Oversight Committee, which now the CNCF has like over 200 is the latest, I think, projects that they host, and Ricardo helps kind of nurture these as part of the Technical Oversight Committee, accept the different projects and make sure that they are healthy. So this is going to be a really good presentation about how making sure that like hundreds of thousands or millions of people can collaborate together more practically through one of the foundations. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation. Yeah, so I'll do the TLDR of the talk, which is why something like the CNCF and this community is so important for CERN. If we look back, we are in 2025. I started working 20 years ago in these kind of things, and when I joined CERN, we were actually building everything ourselves. And we still build some of the stuff ourselves. But if you think back 20 years, which I know is very hard given the average age here, but there were very few people having big data. It wasn't something that you would hear on every single conference, meetup, things like this. But we did have. But because there was not such a need to analyze and deal with these things, we're actually building everything ourselves, which has a huge cost. And this has been the biggest change I've seen since I started working in this, is that with the advent of cloud and the easy access to like really large amounts of resources, suddenly everyone had the capacity, the potential to do something with large amounts of data. But it has a huge cost to deal with this yourselves. So people have gathered in communities like the CNCF and others to try to solve the problem together. And my role was to be a software developer in multiple projects, storage, monitoring, and compute. And my role now is actually to put pieces together that a lot of other people are working on. So it really changed the way we do computing today, and it also makes it possible to do a lot more stuff than we used to do. So this is really the summary of this talk. What I will go into a little bit more detail is how this actually works. It takes a lot of effort from different people, and the goal is to establish the trust you need, and that Sarah was explaining in a very nice way. Not only to contribute, but to actually depend on all these projects. And you need to have a process to guarantee that this trust is sustainable. So just very briefly, this is how the CNCF looks like. If you have questions, there's Daniel, there's Mirko here. They are actually from the CNCF, so they will tell you more about it. But these are the pieces that people rely on. to do different tasks that are needed. So there's the part that takes care of the funding to make sure the organization keeps going, the marketing and setting the direction. This is the governing board. And then there's the part which is the governance of the projects, to make sure that the ecosystem is healthy, that we have a way for projects to evolve in their maturity. There's a question about GIMP. How do we get these projects to be sustainable long-term and help them grow? And this is where different people, myself included, from multiple organizations come in and try to help this out. And then there's the end users, which I'm also part of. There's many end users in the CNCF. Everyone that is using a project in practice is an end user. There's also the CNCF end user that gives you additional perks. But in reality, if you're using a CNCF project, you are an end user. And end users are, if you ask me, the core part of this. All of this exists because people are actually using the projects. They wouldn't be, none of this would be real if people wouldn't actually be using the projects in practice. So the CNCF has a lot of projects. It started with Kubernetes, like I guess everyone heard of Kubernetes, yeah? But things escalated pretty quickly. So this is a graph that is usually shown. We are now over 200 projects, and you can see that there was a slow growth at the first couple of years, slow for the terms that came after. It's still quite impressive, and then it just keeps rising. And there's this, there's been other efforts before as well, and there's always this idea, it's the hype, it will slow down. Doesn't seem like it's slowing down, and it's been now celebrating almost 10 years for the foundation. You can also see that projects have different maturity levels, and I will talk a little bit more about that after. You can also see that the projects are from a wide range of adoption, but also involvement from people. So there are projects like Kubernetes, which is at the core of the whole ecosystem, that have a high number of contributors and a high number of adopters, of course. But then you see a lot more projects there, and you can go, I will give you the link to where this data is available, and this list continues. And it's really interesting to see how projects that you see now quite at the top, if you've been involved in the community, you see how they grew over time. They started as small things, maybe from one company, or even a couple of users, or people in one company pushing for them, and then they get adoption and they grow, and this gets really, really interesting to follow. Now, the problem, of course, is that projects go through cycles themselves as well. They will start with a lot of interest, a lot of engagement, but then when things get, as time passes and there's less excitement, you have to make sure that the project remains sustainable and people just don't leave and go do something else. They will, but someone has to keep it running as well. So this is what the process is also about. I'll give you an example of this. So this is the Kubernetes. Kubernetes is, of course, huge. You can see the number of contributors in the last 12 months, almost 10,000 people contributing to the project. Number of commits, pull requests, you see all this data. There you have the link here, it's called LFX Insights, a very nice tool from the Linux Foundation. But what is interesting is seeing where these contributors are coming from. And the LFX also produces this data that says the top organizations doing 50% of the work, and then the rest of the organizations. And you can see, like, the top 4 doing 50% of the work in Kubernetes is, you see Google, Red Hat, Microsoft, and Intel. Now, I've been working in IT for a long time. If you would ask me 20 years ago, is Google, Red Hat, and Microsoft going to be collaborating in the same project? I would give you an answer immediately. So when I started getting involved in this community and seeing these people working and happily together, it's quite spectacular. And I think it's the biggest contribution of this whole effort is how it got companies together, and you make best friends from companies that are actually competing quite aggressively with each other. But they saw the value of this principle that I was saying, which is together you build better things. You can add more value to whatever you're interested on by working together. And this is very clear. But you have these 4 big companies, but then you have a huge list of other companies. So in the case of Kubernetes, there's over 1,100 organizations contributing. And these are vendors. They can be end users like CERN or any other end user. And it's quite amazing what has been built and how everyone is actually managing to work together in this way. Now, Kubernetes is, of course, one of the best examples because it's a large project. But I will ask, for example, a slightly smaller project called Argo, which is also very popular. Who has heard of Argo? Okay, so half of the room. Argo has over 5,000 contributors, and it has 4 organizations. But the names of these organizations, you have Red Hat there, but it might be that you don't know Intuit or Acuity, especially if you're in Europe. But actually this project was created by a company called Intuit that realized that it was a strategic decision for them to donate this project to be maintained by a larger community, because they understood that by themselves it would be too costly and they would never achieve all the potential that the project could have. So they came forward, donated the project, started creating a community around it, and it's now a huge project with over 5,000 people. And, and you see here the top 4, but you see the next 800 organizations that have contributed to the project in the last 12 months. And this is quite spectacular. Like one end user company, not even making money out of this project, understood that it had to build a community to go forward. Now, I will give you another example, which is a project called Container SSH. And I mentioned it yesterday in my talk as well. Who heard of Container SSH?
First yesterday.
Does yesterday count?
So, but the point I want to make is that it doesn't matter if the project is big or small. Like all the projects are at a different stage, but they all have the same potential. Maybe the use cases are smaller, or maybe you didn't think about all the use cases and you thought, this is just a test project, I'll do it. It's useful for what I'm doing, but who else is interested? You don't know. Just come forward, put it out, listen to what people want to do. This project was created by a couple of people at Red Hat, but it wasn't sponsored by Red Hat. They were doing this in their free time. And we were looking for similar things, and we wanted to do something like this, so we had a call with them, and I was like, why don't you just donate the project? Have you considered this? And they got really excited, like, really? Like the CNCF would take this project? So they did it, and there are a couple of organizations like CERN that were interested. In the meantime, they got different jobs. They don't have time to maintain it anymore, which is fair enough. Like, we are still interested, so we took over. At this moment, we do the majority of the contributions, but our goal is to show the interest, the value of the project, and potentially get more people to collaborate. And this is the process that can take quite a bit of time, and it's trust between the people. It also means that it has to not be owned by a single company, a single organization. This is very important. Sustainability means that this notion of vendor neutrality is very important in the CNCF as well. Now, I just added this slide after I saw Sarah's slide. I love this, so this is not because of this problem, but I thought it was appropriate following Sarah's talk, so I added it here. A couple of years ago, who has heard of etcd, the project? Okay, but a lot of people have never heard. They are using Kubernetes every single day. They are maybe maintaining a lot of applications on top of it, and they've never realized that this project exists. And the reality is that it was there, it was just working. It wasn't relevant, like no one was really making money, but it's actually the core of the whole stack. Without it, the whole thing collapses. And at some point, people realized there's no maintainer left. Who's gonna merge security patches? What's happening here? So, and this is where the foundation really can contribute, because the project became less healthy in this respect, maintainership and being able to actually keep up to date with the problems. So this was raised, and companies and organizations in the CNCF came forward, realized the importance, and just pushed their money where the need was. And they put developers backing the project, and very quickly the project went back to a healthy state. Now it has maintainers that can review PRs, merge things, and this is where sustainability and trust needs to be built so that we can all benefit as end users and also vendors. Now this takes a lot of work, and this is the work I will talk a little bit about the TOC, which is the Technical Oversight Committee in the CNCF. So this is the oversight body for all the projects. Projects come, the most common way to come to the foundation is to enter into what we call sandbox. These are low barrier of entry, not a lot of checks being done, but just making sense that there is a potential or some sort of community already behind the project, and that it fits the use case of the cloud native infrastructure, the ecosystem. It is not compulsory. You can go to what we call incubation. And incubation is really where a lot of the work happens and what we call due diligence. And this is doing the checks that will get the project into a more mature state that will ensure sustainability. And this is, I will mention some examples. It's quite an extensive piece of work to do every time, but it's again, building this trust. You know that if the CNCF is saying that this project is in incubation level, as an end user, I have the guarantees of what I can expect from the project. This is really important as well. You can also apply directly to incubation. This is less common. And then from incubation to graduation is where the CNCF says this project is ready to be taken in a sustainable way. You can trust it to build systems that will last 10 years more and critical things. Now, it doesn't mean that the projects are better or worse. There's a lot of projects that at CERN we use that are sandbox, and they work great for us. I will tell you, we use it in production. But I won't tell you, use it yourself, because I don't know if my use case is the same as yours. And also, I cannot give you guarantees over the sustainability of the project long term. It might be that there's only one organization, not enough diversity in maintainership, and this is a risk. But it's a risk that, as an end user, we decided to take. And this is where things are important. When adopting a project, there are certain guarantees that you get if you take a mature project in graduated state that you cannot have in sandbox. So you will have to do a lot of the work yourself internally as an end user. And this is how we work. At CERN, if someone proposes a new project to be added to our stack, we see, the first thing we'll see is like, if it's a CNCF project, where is it? If it's a graduated project, we skip a lot of the internal checks we do otherwise internally. The kind of things that are, I won't go through details, but the kind of things that we are doing is not the most exciting work in open source. It's not as exciting as writing code, I must say, but it is very important. And there are things like, the list of maintainers, is it documented? This is pretty basic, but if you see open source projects that from people that are not necessarily used to build software that will be adopted by a large amount of other users, these are things that are required, but not necessarily the things you think from the start. From the start, you will want to have the code and the cool stuff working, and this usually comes later. So pretty basic things. There's also other ones, like, is there an easy way, an obvious way of how can I submit an issue? If the project has a problem, how do I report this? If you're using GitHub, it's probably like just opening an issue, but is anyone listening behind? Especially for things like security issues. Is there a way to report in a responsible way a CVE, for example? And how is the project structured in a way that it will invite other people to contribute? This is also extremely important. It might be that the project has all the processes to build and checks for security, but if you want to engage other people, are the processes there so that, or documentation so that people know how they can contribute code? And how can they evolve in the project as well? Maybe I've contributed a couple of patches, but now maybe I'm interested in becoming a maintainer and review other people's patches and maybe participate strongly in the roadmap definition. All these things need really the process to be there. So it takes a lot of people to do this work. I list them here. And the reason I put the faces here, the number one is if you have any question, reach out to any of those people. They will be more than happy to follow up. But also, if you realize it's a very diverse set of people. They work in not only different companies, different types of companies. Some of them are vendors, others are end users, and very different domains as well. But we all meet weekly, if not more sometimes, to discuss how the ecosystem can be maintained healthy and help the projects in their journey. Now, how this is structured, and now I will pitch that we need help. Like the people I list here are the ones that are the TOC members, we say, but actually the Technical Oversight Committee has a lot more people contributing to it. All the work that goes behind the scene is done on what's called technical advisory groups. And they used to be structured in these areas like observability, network runtime, kind of traditional isolation in computing. But this is where anyone can contribute. This means it doesn't matter, don't think about what can I do, just think I want to do it, just come forward and join one of the meetings of one of these groups, and they will help you also in your journey contributing to open source communities and helping out. There's very good examples here of people doing a lot of this for many years now. Now we are restructuring these groups. This is why I'm pitching here. We are restructuring in a very different way. So we won't have this traditional, like I'm an expert in storage, so I joined the tag storage. We realize things have changed since the last 10 years when the foundation was created. So we have different ways of like splitting the work, sort of, in these technical advisory groups. You can see maybe you were more focused on developer experience or in infrastructure, which covers storage, network, a lot of things, or maybe in security. So these are the technical advisory groups. And then there's a lot of work that goes into things that are more long-term, like reviewing projects. This is very important. Guarantee the project health, the onboarding of new projects. We need people to review. Maybe you, if you want, you can join, start contributing and writing reports on this sort of thing. And then contribute a strategy, how we defined the process of how projects can improve the way they onboard new people or get more people to participate. This is also very important. And then initiatives which are short-term efforts, time-bound with the well-scoped objectives. Any of this is something that all of you can contribute. So if you need help, ping me, ping any of us, and I will be more than happy to guide you. There's also another body that is called the Technical Advisory Group. I'll kind of skip through this because it's more an end-user focused. I just wanted to mention it because it's something that was supposed to be there from the start, but we only formalized last year. And this is to get a more structured approach to getting end-user feedback back into the foundation. And this is what we will focus on, which is getting better ways for projects to communicate back to the end users and end users to the projects, define reference architectures. Maybe this is what, as an end user, I'm looking for, and then seeing where gaps might exist in the ecosystem. I will give you, just to finalize, an example of what I think is a success story of all this process. Back in 2019, we had an issue, which is we were starting to adopt containers and containerization at scale. And at scale at CERN, it usually means like pretty large. And we encounter problems that maybe other environments have not seen or not yet seen. And we organized a workshop which we called container software distribution. And the issue was, and I always ask this, which is how to handle container images when you're deploying a large number of jobs. So I'll ask you, who has used containers? Who has had to deal with a container image that is 10 megabytes size or more? Who has had to deal with one that is 100 megabytes or more? 1 gigabyte or more? 10 gigabytes or more? 2, 3, 4, 100 gigabytes or more? Okay, there's 2 people with their hands raised. I have a lot of questions. But we have images that are, it's not uncommon to have images that are 70 gigabytes. I think our current record is something like 210. I've heard from people when I ask this question of images being 1 terabyte. Now this is very close to insanity, but it's reality. And we had to deal with this. And we could say to people, no, but the best practice is say you have to do layers and everything has to be clean. And we went to our users and they told us, no, there's no way we can restructure the software that includes packages in Fortran built in the 70s. We are not restructuring anything. If it doesn't work, we won't use your new stack. So we tried to solve this on the other sense, but we didn't really know how to do it. So what we did was we organized a workshop at CERN, which covered things like software distribution in containers. But it also covered things like rootless containers, which is also something that is very interesting for us. So you can see here the topics. And we had a really nice group of people. So some CERN people, of course. We had Abdel from Google. He was here just yesterday as well. We had Bob and Jeffrey that are now in the CNCF, but they were in the University of Michigan. Bob was at Google in the meantime, but they are all still around. But actually, we met them more in detail at a CERN event. From NTT, from Japan, we had Akihiro and Kohei flying all the way from Japan. Phil Estes was at IBM, he's now at AWS. So all these people came to help us solve a problem. And this is where we saw, okay, there's something here. We can really trust and build something around this because everyone is here to help us. And this was in, let me check, May 2019. Here's the announcement of a new tool by Kohei in April 2020. So actually he had released this to us, but less than a year after, he released this product that says you can start up containers in lightning speed. It's called lazy pooling, and it's amazing. And we are using this in production since then. And it took almost no time. And really, we thought maybe it's just us that are doing this, but we are not. Like, as you saw, other people keep their hands raised. And even the big players, Google announced just 1 year later that there's something called GKE image streaming, which is basically the same thing. So this is where really the value of the community has very concrete examples of where things can help. And that's basically what I have. I'm more than happy to answer questions or after in the panel. So, yeah, thank you.
Two questions.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I've also been at CERN, working at CERN. It was the best place ever.
This wasn't planned. It wasn't staged, but if you want to come work at CERN, just bring me.
Suppose I wanted to become a full-time open source contributor. Is there any way for me to make a living and pay my bills?
I think if you look back at this slide, this was also what I wanted to show. Like all these companies contributing here, this is open source projects. They're actually making a lot of money. Like these are big companies, but there's much smaller companies. This is their business model, is to rely on open source projects. And they do this fully upstream. I don't know, like we have people from Ericsson here. We were just talking to them this morning. They have a team that has decided that it's upstream first. Everything they do is done on open source first. And these are their jobs. Like my job is also, I spend a lot of time in the CNCF. I write code that goes upstream as well. This is my job. I'm not doing this in the evening outside working hours. My employer has realized that this is strategic for what we do and has dedicated people time to this. Exactly, it's like Lucas is working outbound, it's exactly the same. They maintain a tool called Crossplane, which is upstream first. They donated the project is very successful. There's other companies also relying on it and even building products around it. But all of them collaborate because they know this is their business. They have to do it in the open. So it's not the open source, it's what Sarah was also mentioning, it's open source is not free. As in the sense of
Just getting
taking it for free. It has to be nurtured, it has to be made sustainable, but also it has to be sustainable means that someone has to be making a living out of it. Otherwise, people will just move somewhere else. And this is reality. Like this open source model and the business model behind open source is successful. And these are very good examples of where this is successful.
Okay, so basically I need a rich company to back me up.
Well, if you want to start, what I would suggest, the best way, I think, or one possible way, one is to go to companies that have this principle by default, and there's many. You can search for them back in these projects. The other one is to help us. So if you come here and you join one of these initiatives, you will be known in the community, and you won't have to look for a job. People will actually come and get you. And this is what has happened to many people. I will point again to Lucas, which is he started doing things on his own, and then suddenly, like, these companies were actually asking him to come and work for them. So joining the community is a very welcoming community, is a very good first step.
That's actually a very good point, because I think that my value in the job market is rather low, because I've always worked in closed source project. So I don't have an impressive portfolio that I can share.
Exactly, and this is also one of the advantages of these communities that, and especially, okay, I work at CERN, so we are very open about everything we do. I'm not going to say that other companies are this open, but if you're doing open source work, it means you will go to conferences like KubeCon with 12,000 people, and you will present this to everyone. And this is, it's also building your CV. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. One more question.
A question a bit about work with open source when you're already in the company. So how would you argue for an employer or organization that you're in the value proposition of participating in open source, so that don't have to end up in a lot of places where they use a lot of tools, but we want to make them contribute back?
I didn't quite hear.
How do you make the case inside the company?
Yeah, but you organize.
All right, then you go to my backup slides. I did prepare some answers. This wasn't staged, huh? I'm serious. So, this is what I will give you. What works for me, what worked for me as a CERN, and from what I hear other people. That you will get very different answers if you ask other people. So, how do we persuade the company to see the value of open source and help you do this? Now, one thing works really well, which is bring your managers to a CNCF event. The perception of open source is in many organizations totally wrong. It's like it's open source. It's kind of a tool that someone is maintaining in their spare time. Bring them to KubeCon, see them walking around with 12,000 people, go to the sponsor hall and the booths, and see how much money is involved in all of this. And they will change their mind very, very quickly. This works really, really well. And this is a big problem. I do have more, which is invite other end users to internal events in your company. We do this a lot. As CERN, I go to events in other companies where I explain our journey, And I explained the value we are getting from using open source and being part of communities like the CNCF and joining the foundations. It's something that I write here. Sometimes you say this 100 times internally and no one listens. Then you invite someone from outside and they will say the exact same thing, and suddenly it becomes an enlightenment thing and everyone agrees. This works terribly well. It's sad, but it's just like this. So it's better just to accept it and do it than try to do differently. This works. I do this all the time internally. And I have one more, which is internally, once you started the process, make sure you highlight all the successes. Like what I'm mentioning here about this container software workshop. This is something that I will repeat insanely. I don't care how many times I have to repeat internally, as a good example of what we are getting. Like this is something that we would never have been able to tackle by ourselves. We got the community involved, everyone saw interest on it, and we got it from the community. We contributed to giving feedback and supporting the developers, and it's now serving hundreds of thousands of workloads in production at CERN. So all of this are ways to do it. There are others, but I would recommend at least these three.
I think we need to, let's take it, let's have a break, and then you can ask it from in the break. Yes.
Or in the panel.
Or the panel, yes.
There's lots
Yes,
of
you can save some of your questions as well for the panel. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.